We've all done it. I know I have. You want to lose weight, so you go on a diet, but you fail to cut enough calories, so you head to the gym for hours, hoping that will shed the pounds, which doesn't always work. But there's some good news. New research shows that's just not how the body works. Professor Herman Pontzer is an evolutionary anthropologist. His new book, Burn, contains 10 years of groundbreaking research that proves doing more exercise doesn't burn more calories.
No matter the lifestyle, our bodies are burning the same number of calories. And that has big implications for how things like diet, exercise, obesity, disease, how those all play out in our lives here in the West.
A calorie is a unit of energy, but due to a strange quirk in the history of nutritional science, we usually say calories when we actually mean kilocalories or 1,000 calories. That's the same amount of energy needed to heat 1 litre of water by 1 degree Celsius. In terms of food, one of these chocolate-based sweets contains around 4 kilocalories. Walking 1.6 kilometres burns around 50 kilocalories, or 12 of these. For an average man's body just to function, he needs to eat 3,000 kilocalories a day. For a woman, it's 2,300. Simply put, any energy we take in above these levels, the body stores, and it stores it in the form of fat. But what's tipping the scales in the West is the type of food we're eating.
The ultra-processed, sort of industrialized foods that we're surrounded with push us to overeat. We know how they affect our brain. They light up our reward systems in a way that natural foods never can. These are foods that our brains are not evolved to have ever encountered, and they're literally engineered in a lab and focus group tested to be overconsumed. And so we shouldn't maybe be surprised when that's exactly what people do. They overconsume them. So ultra-processed foods seem to be really a big problem. And they are over half the calories we eat in the industrialized world.
Processed foods includes anything that changes a food's original form, such as cheese or bread. Ultra-processed food has been significantly changed with salt, sugar, fat, additives and preservatives, and includes soft drinks, pizza and chips. The professor knew how many calories a typical person from the West burned a day, but he didn't know how that compared to a hunter-gatherer. So why did you choose to focus your research on the Hadza people in Tanzania?
I study human evolution, and for 2.5 million years of our evolution, we are all hunting and gathering. And so if you want to understand the evolutionary forces and lifestyles that sort of shaped our bodies, then that's the lifestyle that you want to understand. The Hadza people are one of the few communities left on the planet that still hold on to those hunting and gathering traditions. They're as modern as you and me in terms of their bodies, but they hold on to those old traditions, and so they're a great chance to look into what that lifestyle does to our bodies.
Professor Pontzer is looking to see how lifestyle impacts our total energy expenditure. That is all the kilocalories an individual burns in a day, and it can be broken down into the following. The first and largest section is our basal metabolism, or basal metabolic rate. This includes all the chemical processes in the body that require energy, such as repairing cells or breathing. It's unique for everyone, but the statistical average is slightly higher in men. We also use kilocalories to consume kilocalories, as energy is required to break down food. Finally, physical exercise brings us to the total energy expenditure for an individual. In the case of the Hadza tribe, who have an extremely active lifestyle, Professor Pontzer's expectation was that the kilocalories required for physical exercise would be much greater, pushing higher the total energy expenditure. So how many calories do you need to survive as a hunter-gatherer?
Well, that was the big surprise, because we were so sure that they would burn tons of calories, more than we do here in the West, because they are incredibly physically active. They get more activity in a day than the typical American gets in a week. And so we were sure, the whole reason we went there was to see how many more calories a day they're burning than we are. And instead, we were shocked to learn that it's the same number of calories as you and me. So even though they're really physically active, they don't burn more calories every day.
The professor found the Hadza men were burning around 2,600 kilocalories and the women 1,900, which, according to the professor, is about the same as a Westerner with a desk job. And that is at odds with the accepted school of thought that sedentary lifestyles are what causes obesity.
This is the first study to measure energy expenditures in a hunting and gathering group. The reason nobody had done it before was that you need techniques that have only been developed the last sort of couple decades and hadn't ever been implemented in these kind of contexts.
To work out precisely how many calories a person uses in a day, the scientists measure how much carbon dioxide they release through breathing. This is because carbon dioxide is only produced by calories being burnt by the body. They can do this through clever biochemistry and mathematics using something called doubly labelled water. Doubly labelled water contains uncommon forms of the elements oxygen and hydrogen, known as isotopes. They have more neutrons in their atoms, giving them a greater mass and therefore traceable when leaving the body, using a method called mass spectrometry. A person is given doubly labelled water containing isotopes oxygen-18 and hydrogen-2. Over time, hydrogen and oxygen exit the body as water through sweating and bodily functions. Additional oxygen is also lost through carbon dioxide during breathing. Urine is regularly collected and measured to see how much oxygen-18 and hydrogen-2 has been lost over time. When plotted on a graph, oxygen is lost more rapidly, with a steeper slope, due to more oxygen being released in carbon dioxide when breathing. The slope of hydrogen-2 loss against oxygen-18 loss can be compared and the difference calculated to measure how much carbon dioxide has been excreted by the body. This figure can then be inserted into a formula to accurately work out how many calories were expended. This is called indirect calorimetry.
So lifestyle doesn't seem to be a big factor, right? People who are active or less active have the same energy expenditures on average. But of course, around that average, there's a lot of variation. We don't have a great understanding yet of all of the sort of genetic components and maybe early life experiences that affect your body's metabolic rate, what your body sets its metabolic rate to, the thermostat. And so that's an exciting area for new research. What we do know is that if you have a fast metabolism or a slow metabolism, that doesn't seem to affect your risk of gaining or losing weight.
The findings were tested further in South America, this time on children of the Shua tribe.
If we want to understand how industrialization and market integration, how that has affected our bodies, you want to catch a population that's catch them in action, catch them in the process of moving from rural, remote, traditional lifestyles into more urban lifestyles. Sam Erlacher led this study with the Shuar children in Ecuador. And if you compare energy expenditure, activity, body fat, diet for kids that are really remote and still have a very traditional lifestyle to kids who are in these more urban lifestyles, it's the same population, just the lifestyle's changed. What you see is that the energy expenditures are still the same. And yet the kids near the cities are gaining a bit more fat. They're not overweight or obese sort of yet. I mean, they're kind of heading that direction as a society. And it has everything to do with diet and not energy expenditure, because we've measured both and we know it's the diet.
You also focused on children between the ages of 4 and 12. Why is that?
The focus on children, I think, is important because childhood obesity is beginning to be a bigger and bigger issue. And we need to understand that now so we can fix the problem as quickly as we can. The other issue is that once we get to be adults and our bodies are kind of set at our adult weight and our adult composition, I think a lot of us know from experience that's a very hard thing to change.
Adding to the list of discoveries was how much the body adapts and slows down calorie burning when a person exercises above a certain level.
So if you spend energy on physical activity, if your muscles are burning the energy in exercise, then your body responds by taking energy away from other tasks. And that's how we think you sort of balance the books and keep your energy budget in check.
This was shown in 2016 when he joined with a group of researchers to study extreme marathon runners.
If I look at active people versus inactive people, I'll see the same expenditures after the body adjusts. And we wanted to know how far can you push it, right? Because everybody knows that surely if you run a marathon, then at least on that day, you're burning more calories. And what if you ran a marathon every day for 5 months? And so we actually found people who were doing this. We were invited to measure energy expenditures for people who ran from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. over the course of 5 months. Absolutely incredible. And what we saw was that, of course, if you're doing that, your body can't adjust to that entirely. It tries, so we see some metabolic adjustment. They're burning more calories at the beginning of that transcontinental race than they are at the end. So then the question becomes, how come you can't keep up that 4,000 calories a day? How come you can't keep it up forever? And the answer seems to be that there's a sort of sliding scale, that you can burn tons of calories for a day or two, and then if you want to go for a month, well, then that ceiling's a bit lower for a month, and in 2 months, well, the ceiling's lower still. And so you can imagine that sort of the longer you go, the lower that metabolic ceiling is, right? And then if you extend it into, well, what about daily life? What about forever? What about years and years and years? And that metabolic ceiling is where all of us are living under day to day, including groups like the Hadza, right? So the marathon runners are kind of the exception that proves the rule. You can push it for a while, but daily life, you can't.
You may be watching this and thinking, well, I may as well ditch the running if I'm not going to lose any weight. But if you just diet and don't exercise, you could be sacrificing the rest of your body's health.
Exercise is so good. It's good for your brain, your heart, your immune system. And actually all that metabolic adjustment that keeps your energy expenditure in check, that's really good for you too. So exercise has a role there as well. I think the bigger danger is that if you tell people that they'll lose weight with exercise and they don't, because on average people don't lose weight with exercise, then they'll assume something's wrong, or they're doing it wrong, or it's not working for them, and they stop.
Professor Pontzer certainly isn't stopping. These revelations have opened up new research pathways.
Once we discovered that the body is sort of more interesting and sophisticated and dynamic than we suspected, then we had to figure out how it's doing all that and what the implications are. So the last few years, we've been figuring out exactly what switches get turned off, or at least dialed down, in response to activity. And so we've got projects going on right now trying to look at all that and sort of connect all the dots.
But while he's busy doing that, we all need to watch what we eat, or the obesity epidemic and therefore chronic health issues will only get worse.
I think that we have to tell people that obesity is a diet problem. I think the messaging starts first, and then we go and we work to get those messages out into the communities that need to hear it, in useful ways. It's a diet problem and not an exercise problem.
Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and hit the bell button below for notifications. We'll see you next time.